Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 207, and today's date is November 5th, 2013, and the title of this episode is Are Mass Shootings Training Everyone for Martial Law? And before I get started, I just want to thank all of those people who donated to the x22report.com site. Thank you very much. It really helps out keeping all of this going and maintaining everything, and I really do appreciate it. For those people who are new, who just subscribed, or have never ever come to the x22report.com site, come on over. We have many things on the site. I just updated the economic collapse timeline, and if you go to the site, there's a tab up top that says economic collapse. I added more things to the timeline right now. And what I'm doing is I'm trying to create a story of all the different events that are occurring, so when we look back, we can see how everything is happening. Or if we look at it right now, we can say, oh, I see where this is leading, and this is why I am doing it. And if you are new, or you've been listening to me for quite a while and you haven't joined the people, go over to the little tab that says The People. It is a form. It is completely free. You can make up a username. Everyone there is really friendly. I'm in the forum and chatting with different subjects, and people bring up very helpful tips, and we talk about the news. And if you haven't seen it, it does not cost anything. You can go right over. You can use a code name, put up a picture, not of yourself, but of something else, and you can join in, or just go over there and just read what everyone is saying. So let's get into the economic collapse news, and we're going to go out to Greece, and we know that Greece is in quite a bit of trouble here. And it's really just getting worse for the people. It is getting worse for everyone over in Greece, and things are not going well there at all. And right now, Greek companies cannot even pay their taxes. And what has happened is the number of corporations that have fallen behind on their taxes soared from 182,000 to 526,000. And their obligations have tripled to over 1.5 million in 1 month. And what is happening is they just can't. They're not bringing enough revenue to meet their tax obligations. So what is happening is the government is realizing this, and they are putting these companies on payment plans on for a 12-month installment plan to pay down their taxes. And this is how bad it is getting. I mean, it went from 182,000 all the way up to 500,000. I mean, that is quite a lot of businesses that cannot pay their taxes. And we can just see especially those retail businesses with high unemployment, there is just not enough revenue coming in right now to maintain this system. And, if we look over in Spain, and I know that, the Eurozone, and I talked about this a lot, there was a lot of propaganda where this summer that, the Eurozone is coming out of it, unemployment's dropping. And it's funny, if you look at the corporate media, that is what they're still saying. And if you look, their unemployment went from 12.1 to 12.2%, but in the summer they made it they were specifically telling everyone that it went from 12.1 to 12.0, but there was a miscalculation, and they had to add a lot more people onto the unemployment spreadsheet, and then it turned out to be that actually unemployment has gone up. And in Spain, it has increased quite a bit. I mean, in September, the number of people that are unemployed rose about 25,000 people, and in October it went up drastically. It just shot up to 87,000 people who do not have work right now. And this, is really becoming a very big problem. And in Spain, their unemployment rate is approaching 30%. And don't be fooled here in the U.S. I'm in the U.S. Don't be fooled. Just because it says 7.2% doesn't mean that's the real unemployment. If you've been listening to me for a while, you understand, and those people who are new, that in 1994 they changed the calculation on how to calculate unemployment, and they do not count those people who are no longer looking for work. If we add those people back into the equation, the unemployment in the U.S. is around 24%. But in Spain, according to a report published in October, the number of Spaniards living in severe poverty has doubled to around 3 million since the economic crisis started, and it is just getting worse. And here, I've been going over, layoffs and how things don't make sense because we have to look back a year. If we look back to 2011 and 2010, unemployment was higher, right? I mean, it was like around 8.5, 8.7. Then it was coming down because the government was manipulating the numbers, and it was making everything look better. But if that was the case and the unemployment was coming down, we would see retail sales doing better, right? I mean, more people are employed, more people spending money, more people have disposable income. We would see housing getting better. We would see more Americans buying homes, taking out mortgages. We would see all of this. We would see companies hiring people, not laying off. And let's just take a look here. Yesterday I mentioned that the financial industry, since the beginning of 2013 in the mortgage area, laid off around 49,000 people. Well, that's a sure sign that things are getting better in the housing market, because that's what you do. You lay off all the people who are writing mortgages for people to buy homes. That's exactly what you do. But if I remember correctly, in the years of 2005, 2006, 2007, these companies were hiring people like crazy because there was a real housing bubble going on at this time where Americans were purchasing homes because they had jobs at that time. Today, we're really looking at a 24% unemployment, and we're looking at underemployment, where they're still counting people who came from a full-time job and working at a part-time job. They're counting those people as employed, but they're not making the same amount of money. So if you're not making the same amount of money, you can't purchase a home. Because you just don't have the funds to do this. And we also have to look at, of all the people who foreclosed, people who had short sales, all these people do not have credit at this time to afford a mortgage. But if we look at the number of companies that are laying off, and let's just look at the tech industry right now. So from the beginning of this year, 2013, to now, HP has laid off 15,000 people. And they're going to continue this to the end of the year. IBM cut 1,600 people. EMC has cut 1,000 people. VMware, 900. Cisco, 500 people. And in just this August, they're going to slice another 4,000 people by the end of this year. Broadcom said this month that they're going to start cutting 1,100 people. Motorola, 1,200, and BlackBerry, 4,500 people. So you tell me where this recovery is happening. Now, all these desk jobs and all these people who had full-time work, where are they going to find a tech job if all these tech companies are laying off? It's going to be very difficult. And I know friends of mine, because I am in the tech industry, and people that I know working for different companies have been laid off, and they've said it is very difficult finding work right now, and most of them have been unemployed for longer than 6 months right now, and they still can't find anything. What's happening is they send their resumes out. There's headhunters, there's consulting firms that, tell you that there's a job. They send their resumes in, and they're putting resumes out there, 5, 8 resumes a week, and they are not hearing from anyone. It just like gets sucked into a big black hole, and you're not nobody contacts you. When they do get contacted, it's from a consulting firm, and they're just asking them for information. And when they ask them, do you actually have work? No, we're just responding to the resume that you sent us. We're going to put it on file, and once we find something, we're going to let you know. And guess what? They never call back. Now, again, in different areas, it's going to be a different situation. But again, in most places, this is what is happening at this time. Now, I mentioned real estate before. I mentioned mortgages. Right now, U.S. home prices rise at a slower pace in September than they were in August. Well, we can see what is happening. Mortgage applications are plummeting. People cannot afford homes. Most of the houses are being purchased in cash. About 60% of the homes are being purchased in cash, and those are by investment firms, hedge funds, and whatnot. So this is what we're seeing right now, and right now there is generally a 1 to 2 month lag between a signed contract and a completed sale. The sharp drop in September suggests final sales will decline in the coming months, and that is what we're going to see, because back in August, September, leading into October, we saw mortgage applications declining, and there's always a lag between sales declining. And now, as we're heading into the winter months, which are not good anyhow for real estate, we are going to see a huge, huge decline in real estate purchases, and everything is going to start to implode. Yesterday, I mentioned that the government is making some type of deal with college students who cannot pay off their loans because they cannot find work, or they have a part-time job, or a job not in their field, and they're making a lot less than they thought they were going to make. Right now, Trulia, which is a real estate website, they are hitting the panic button right now because young adults are refusing to move out of their parents' basements. Why? Because they cannot find steady, good work that pays enough for them to move out. And Trulia is saying right now, looking at the latest Census Bureau data on household information, they finally threw in the towel and rang the panic button, as not only have young Americans set anchor in their parents' basement, but they're also having a very difficult time finding a good job that pays them enough. And we have to remember, there has been no increase over the past year in young adults moving out of the parents' homes or getting jobs, and this is most worrying, Trulia says. There's 53% of vacant homes were held off the market in the third quarter, and that means the banks, are holding them and not foreclosing and not putting them back onto the market because they do not want to make real estate completely implode all at once, because that's what would happen. And I know a couple of people who are in their homes who haven't paid a dime on their mortgage, and guess what? The banks are letting them live there without paying. They're not coming to foreclose. They're not doing anything. The people are maintaining their homes, cutting the grass, doing everything they're supposed to, but they haven't paid their mortgage, and it's been over a year and a half. And what they're doing is they're just keeping them off the market. And this is 53% of vacant homes were held off the market. Think about all the homes that they're not going to, that are not vacant and people are still living there, but just not making payments. So all of this is a complete illusion to make you think that real estate is actually getting better. And if you look at the corporate media, they are continually saying that housing is rebounding. You see flipping shows. You see Reuters and CNN all talking about, the best time to flip and how to redo your home. It reminds me of prior to 2008, right before it crashed. And even when the crash was going on and people didn't understand that there was no more traffic to homes to buy the homes, they still had all the flipping shows. They still had all the realtors and the people going out trying to flip their home, and they're sitting on their homes for months and months and months, and no one's coming to buy them because no one realized the market was collapsing at that time. But the mainstream media, the corporate media, was still telling everyone that everything was fine, and the Fed was telling everyone that it was fine. The government was out there telling everybody that it was fine. But right now, we know it isn't, and soon you will see them start talking about how things are not going well. Usually they'll wait until it completely collapses, and then they'll let you know. Okay, now the FBI is seeking to put video recognition technology all over the place. And what they're doing right now is they want a technology that can quickly identify suspects, even if all the cameras capture the perpetrators with hats or their faces are shadowed. They still want it to work, and they still want it to identify the person. And what they have done is they invited contractors in to submit written proposals, and they want them very quickly by November 13th. And this system has to be very advanced. It can't be just like scanning the person's face and trying to figure it out. They wanted to do a lot more than that. And what they're looking for it to do is they're looking to do the following. They want a system to use something called clustering or grouping images. For example, let's say we have a bunch of people with the same T-shirt logo, or the camera picks up the person someplace with the T-shirt logo, that another person with another T-shirt logo. They want to group these people together, or if it's the same person, they want to make a timeline of this person by what they're wearing or some type of marker that they have on them to make it easier. They also want to do something called tracking and re-identification. So what this allows them to do is to take multiple videos of the same person from all over the place, put it all together, and create a timeline of where this person was and where they were going and where they were, who they met with, automatically. Instead of them sitting there reviewing all these tapes and all these videos and all these things, they want the system to do this automatically, display to them, here they are at the Walmart, 2 minutes later they went over here, 3 minutes later they went over here, they met with this person, they traded that, and this is what they wanted to do. They also wanted to take this technology a step further. They want to create the system where it will analyze your behaviors. So this is what they're saying. They want an automated recognition of individuals based on behavior. This advanced algorithm would analyze your voice, your expression, your mannerisms, how you react to things, and group you into a specific video analysis, and it will allow them to identify you if they cannot get your face. So if they see you and you're walking a certain way or you're tilting your head, the system will automatically pick this up, compare it to other videos, and then put together a timeline that this is you. And this is what they're looking to do. So this will be a complete police state. You will not be able to go anywhere without them tracking you. And again, this is completely against the Fourth Amendment. But again, the government does not care anymore. You can see they are doing things that are completely null and void of the Fourth Amendment, but they continually to pass laws. They are continuing to do things that are illegal, but at this point they really don't care because we are at the end game. They realize this. They realize we are headed towards this economic collapse. We are headed towards this war, and they understand the dollar is collapsing, and at this point it doesn't really matter, and eventually you'll see this progress even faster, and we are seeing this now when we look all over the place. I mean, if we just look at certain things out there, we see that Obama is continuing with the NSA spying. He's spying on countries all around the world. Dianne Feinstein has just created a bill that will allow the NSA to keep doing what they're doing. She's also creating another bill that will make it illegal to talk badly about the NSA or question the NSA or criticize the NSA. So you can see that they don't care about anything that's going on right now. They are also doing things like, um, drone striking in other countries, and this is not based on war. It's based on absolutely nothing, and they are killing innocent people. But again, it doesn't matter. They're doing whatever they want, and we're seeing this happen more and more often. Okay, now we know that China and Russia are having military exercises and they flex their muscles, and then the U.S. returns the favor by having military exercises to show them that, hey, look, we're here, we know what's going on. And the United States is planning to conduct more joint military exercises in the Western Pacific. Amid China's concerns over the presence of American forces in the region, the U.S. Navy and the Marine Corps propose to hold an anti-submarine training and practice unit and mixed unit tactics with allies such as Japan, of course, while using real bullets and bombs. And we understand this. They're doing this off an island in the Pacific that is not habited by people right now. There is volcanic action, and they are using live gunfire there. We understand that Japan was holding military drills right near China. They were also following China around with their ships. And we see this happening more and more often, and we understand why this is happening, because this is in preparations for what is coming, because we know the central bankers, the U.S. government, need to get a war started to cover up this economic collapse, because they cannot keep the dollar propped up anymore. They are losing control in the Middle East, and we see this happening right in front of our eyes. And China says American military in the region could endanger peace. It also urged the U.S. to abstain from flexing its muscles, and Beijing is considering the Pentagon's focus to pivot increased U.S. military presence in the Asia-Pacific as a strategy to counter China's increasing global influence. And we do understand that the United States and its allies have created bases all around China, which is encircling China right now. Now, the U.S. Is working right now with Romania and Poland. I mentioned this before, and what they are doing, it's clearer now, they are creating a missile shield in Central Eastern Europe, and they are building this right now. And on October 28th, work started at the former air base in Romania, installing elements of the U.S. missile defense system. And after this one is completed, the third stage would be to also put one into Poland. And we also understand that Russia is putting their missile defenses in Belarus, which borders Poland, in that area in the NATO on the NATO border. And we can see Russia creating their missile shield, and we see the U.S. and its allies creating their missile shield. And right now, the U.S. calls the Romanian base and their missile shield an aircraft carrier on Romania to protect that whole entire region. Now, we understand that they were supposed to have a peace talk, a Geneva II, on Syria, but they've called this off. The Geneva Conference for a Political Solution on the Syrian War will not take place at the end of the month as scheduled. They completely canceled it at this time, because what do we know? We know the U.S. government, central bankers, Israel, Saudi Arabia, and other Middle East nations, and this is also including France, the UK, all the NATO allies. They want Assad removed from government, because that government that is in place right now is not selling the oil, the natural resources, using the U.S. dollar. They are bypassing the U.S. dollar. The same thing goes with Iran. They are not selling their oil using the U.S. dollar. They also don't have a private Western central bank in their country to loan out money with interest. So this is the reason the U.S. government central bankers need to get into these countries because they need to keep the U.S. dollar afloat. And the only way to do that is to push out the dollar in more countries and to sell more resources using the US dollar. Because what happens when countries stop using the US dollar? They don't need it anymore. They don't need to keep it. They don't need the treasury bonds. So what happens? They start selling the treasury bonds. They start sending back the US dollars. And the Fed, which is the main purchaser of treasury bonds, would need to purchase the treasury bonds, because if there's a seller of a treasury bond, there has to be a buyer, and the Fed right now is the only buyer. So if all these nations start selling the treasury bonds, the Fed will have to start purchasing it, and they already have like close to 2 or 3 trillion, I think it's approaching 4 trillion already on their books. Plus, all these countries that used to hold U.S. dollars don't need them anymore, and guess what they do? They send them back to the U.S. If they send them back to the U.S., these U.S. dollars flood the U.S. market, and what do we see here? Inflation, hyperinflation, because more and more of this money is coming back, this currency, I should say, is coming back to the U.S. And this is why they've been trying for over 25 years to get into Iran, because Iran is the grand prize. This is really what they want to do at this time. And there's an analyst who is saying that the true intentions of the U.S. is a regime change in Iran, just like in Syria, no difference. And this goes on to say that the United States is determined to overthrow the elected government in Iran and to replace it with a puppet government that would do America and Israel's bidding, said Mark Glenn in a Tuesday interview, and we know this for a fact. And again, you see these peace talks. This is an illusion to make the world believe that the U.S., the central bankers, are for peace. They are not. Eventually, they will do something to start a war. What will that be? I'm thinking it's going to be a false flag event on American soil. It will be coupled with a cyber attack. It will be biological. It could be chemical. It could be nuclear. Because we have to remember, it might not be chemical at this time, because it would be very hard to produce evidence that it was Syria with chemical weapons. But I guess they could pin it on Iran. But most likely it would probably be a small nuclear detonation, or they've been telling us that Assad has biological weapons and Al-Qaeda is trying to get their hands on this. And this will be a multi-pronged approach to create havoc in the states, to get people scared, afraid, and really angry, and want to go to war, because what they've learned from their attempt with Syria is that the American people really don't care what is going on other parts of the world. They kind of care, but they're not going to go to war for it. The only way to get people together, riled up, and ready to go to war and get Congress on board is to have an event here in the U.S., just like we saw in 9/11 that allowed the U.S. government to invade Afghanistan. It allowed them to say we need to go into Iraq. And they are using all of this in the same way. And we will definitely see something happen very, very soon. Now, there is a report saying that armies and police are being privatized around the world. And here at home, they're saying that, since the cash-strapped American cities and even communities are now turning to private forces to protect public order. And a report out of the UN on Monday shows that private security industry is experiencing a global economic boom. And we understand that the troops are being removed from certain areas around the world, but the U.S. is really not removing itself from the region. What they're doing is they're actually replacing the troops with paid mercenary or these paid private troops or armies that are put into place into these countries. And right now, the U.S. is the world's biggest spender on private security, totaling $138 billion a year, thanks in a large part to a spike in demand during the concurrent wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. So this is what has been happening. So when you hear, oh, all our troops are leaving these areas and we are no longer involved, that is false. They are keeping troops there. They are bringing in paid mercenaries or these private armies to do the United States central bankers' bidding in these areas and to maintain control, because we have to remember these countries have natural resources. For example, Afghanistan has copper. It has the poppy fields, and these poppy fields they use it to create opium, which they sell to pay for a lot of their military projects that they have going. And we can see that they are not going to let these countries just, go off and be by themselves with all of these natural resources. And in Afghanistan, China, all right, is already there helping the Afghan people with mining their copper deposits. And you can tell that the U.S. is not going to leave this area whatsoever. Okay, now, we talked about in my past reports that November 1st, the EBT food stamp program is going to be reduced. Even though food is going up and and other things are going up because of inflation, which they don't want to admit to. And it's funny, I was just in the supermarket today, and on my site, I have a tab up there that says inflation, deflation, and milk was $3.95 the last time I put that up there, and today it's now up to $3.99. So it just went up another 4 cents. So I don't know who these people are that saying there's no inflation. I see it all over the place. But I talked about the EBT, the food stamp, and everyone was very concerned that there were going to be riots. Well, we're not going to see riots on the first day because, if you're getting 700 or 800 or 500, depending on how many people are in your family, they have money. But what happens is this money does not last too long. And most of the time it lasts to the third week of the month. Now, since they cut back on the food stamps, it might only last to the second week. And what is happening is food banks are very worried because the head of the Pennsylvania largest food bank has warned that the demand for groceries following this $5 billion cut in food stamp program cannot be met. They will not have enough food. And food pantry organizers will be unable to plug the hole being left by a reduction in the federal funding for food stamp, which leaves families of 4 in Pennsylvania facing the prospect of 20 fewer meals per month. And we're seeing this come in from many different states, like Arizona said the same thing, and they're sounding the similar warnings. And we're seeing this all over the place. So the true impact of this is not going to be felt until mid or to the end of November when they run out of food. And what they're saying is, that it's going to send people into the charitable system that's already overwhelmed, and people are going to be screaming that they need food, and they're going to run out because they can't keep up with the demand. And it is always said that riots are always caused in the same way. When people go hungry, that's when people get angry. When people get angry, they start to picket, and when they start to picket, they start to riot because they get frustrated that no one is listening. And we can definitely see something happen towards the end of November here. And this could be a very good reason why the Department of Homeland Security is looking for and contracting outside security to guard against certain government buildings, and they've also purchased $500,000 worth of fully automatic pepper spray launchers and projectiles that are designed to use during riot control situations. So we could see something occur at this time. We will have to wait to see how this plays out. Now, I talked about the military and Obama, where Obama is purging the military. Well, it looks like they are not just relieving generals and other officers of command. The Pentagon is preparing a top-to-bottom changes, including a push to limit the growth of military pay. These cuts are going to be fast. They're going to be very abrupt, and the military is going to take a very big hit with this. And it seems like these generals are out there. Major General Paul E. Valley and General William G. Boykin, and let's see here, Major General Patrick Henry Brady have all gone on record characterizing Obama's action as nothing less than an all-out attack on American armed forces. So we can see what is happening at this time. Now, I'd like to talk about what happened last night in New Jersey. There was another mass shooting. No one got hurt, no one was killed, but the shooter was found dead in a room or a closet. But people have reported that this person was carrying an assault rifle or a shotgun. He was dressed in all black and had a black helmet with a tinted visor. And we can see what is happening right now. We understand that the UN Arms Treaty was signed by John Kerry. That is pending in the Senate. And senators have come out and said, we are not going to ratify this. We are not going to pass this. We also know that the gun bill is still pending in the Senate, and they are just sitting there. What we have seen in the last couple of weeks are these main mass shootings that CNN and all the corporate media have jumped on and have really publicized. Yes, I know there's a lot of other shootings going on all the time in the cities, but you can tell what they are trying to do. They are taking those mass shootings, especially those that have assault weapons, and those that, of course, the LA airport one that had the man with anti-government and conspiracy theory and that type of propaganda in there. And this New Jersey one was another case trying to get the American people to be afraid of going to certain going to certain areas like the airport, like to the mall, because there could be a mass shooter there. And all of this is a buildup. And I've said this in my other reports. This is a buildup to get these bills passed, because I explained to you in episode 203 and 204 their agenda, and they're in the tail end of phase 2. It is to disarm the American people so they can push forward their agenda. And their agenda is to destroy the Constitution. And you can see they're doing it right now. Their agenda is to have total control over the people. Their agenda is to get rid of the military and build DHS, to build TSA, to arm TSA, to take care of you, and you. This is what they are doing right now. These acts are also training you that this is what martial law is going to look like. It's going to look like military people on the street, full gear, assault weapons, walking into your home whenever they want to inspect it. And this is what they are training you for. They are training you for martial law. This is what they want you to get used to. This is why they're having live fire exercises in Miami, in Houston, in the cities with helicopters flying, shooting, not giving warning. They are brainwashing everyone to get used to this. This is why you see schools doing these types of trainings. This is all getting everyone ready for what is coming. Now, There was back in on Zero Hedge. He wrote something a while back and he updated it. And this was taken from a German pastor who lived during World War II, during Hitler, and the the poem was called First They Came, and I'm just going to read you some of what Zero Hedge. He changed around the wording to be more up to date and to reflect what is happening now in our time. First, they tortured a U.S. citizen and a gang member. I remained silent. I wasn't a criminal. Then they tortured a U.S. citizen, whistleblower, and Navy veteran. I remained silent. I wasn't a whistleblower. Then they locked up an attorney for representing accused criminals. I remained silent. I wasn't a defense attorney. Then they arrested a young father walking his son simply because he told Dick Cheney that he disagreed with his policies. I remained silent. I never talked to an important politician. Then they said an entertainer should be killed because she questioned the government's version of an important historical event. I remained silent. I wasn't an entertainer. Then they arrested people for demanding that Congress hold the president to the Constitution. I did not speak out. I never protested in Washington. Then they arrested a man for holding a sign. I held my tongue. I never held that kind of a sign. Then they broke a minister's leg because he wanted to speak at a public event. I said nothing. I wasn't a religious leader. Then they shot a student with a taser gun and arrested him for asking a question of a politician at a public event. I remained silent. I wasn't a student. Then they started labeling virtually every innocent and normal behavior as marking Americans as potential terrorists. I remained silent. I didn't want to be called a terrorist. Then they threw political dissenters into psychiatric wards. I remained silent. I didn't want to be seen as crazy. Then they declared that they could label U.S. citizens living on U.S. soil as unlawful enemy combatants and imprison them indefinitely without access to an attorney. I remained silent. I didn't want to be labeled an enemy. Then they assassinated an American citizen without any court trial. And they killed his son because he could have had a far more responsible father. I remained silent. I live on American soil. Then they declared that they could assassinate U.S. citizens living on U.S. soil without any due process of law. I remained silent. I didn't want to be on the list. Then they forced down the airplane carrying the president of a sovereign nation because they were looking for that whistleblower. I remained silent. I'm not a foreign leader. Then they called for the founder of an independent publisher to be killed by a drone. I remained silent. I don't want to worry about drone strikes against me. Then they started spying on all Americans, even though top experts said that doesn't protect us from terrorism. I remained silent. I didn't want to call even more attention to myself from the spies. Then they charged the partner of an investigative journalist with terrorism for transporting whistleblowing documents to the journalist regarding illegal NSA spying. I remained silent. My wife isn't a journalist. When they came for me, everyone was silent. There was no one left to speak out. Listen, everyone. Thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thank you.